Alright, so Zenless Zone Zero is going to be giving a free S rank character and W engine to every player as part of the first anniversary, which is really huge honestly. I think that for newer players, just getting a standard character at all is a really good thing, but even for people who have been playing a while, more veteran players, having mindscapes for some of these standard characters can also be a very good thing. So today, I'm going to go over each of the characters and give my overall best picks for this selector here. Now, it is going to be a bit in depth since I am going to talk about just basically how the character works, notable mindscapes for them, then talk about their overall value in my opinion, and I'll also touch on each character's W engine since we do have the W engine selector as well. So there are going to be timestamps as well because there is a good amount to talk about since we do have 6 characters to go over here. But with that out of the way, let's move into our first character here being Grace. So Grace is an electric anomaly character, and she does tend to have a lower on-field time, because the core for gameplay is to get shocks mainly using her core passive, which is anytime you use her basic attack, she's going to gain a stack of zap, and when you have 8 stacks of zap, you can use her EX special to detonate extra grenades, which will deal a lot of electric anomaly. So this is really good to have some quick bursts of anomaly as well as disorder if you're pairing her with another anomaly character. You can also use her ultimate as well to have a pretty nice electric anomaly buildup as well. So that is going to be pretty solid and just her general gameplay loop there. Just getting the basic attacks, use that EX special, and weaving in the ultimate when you can. So now let's talk about the notable mindscapes for her. She does have 3, which I think have pretty solid effects here. So her M2 is going to debuff the enemy's electric res and electric anomaly buildup res for 8 seconds anytime they're hit by her basic attack, her special, or her EX special, which is really good because that means you're just going to build up her electric anomaly faster. Her M4 is going to allow her EX special to give her stacks of charge, and these will allow her to increase the amount of energy she regenerates from her basic attack and her dash attack, which is really good because you are going to want to get that EX special off as much as possible to use those zap stacks. And then for her M6, she's going to enhance the special and EX special attack when consuming the zap stacks during them, so they're going to deal even more damage to enemies, which is a very good thing since she is a kind of sub DPS, kind of lower field time character. Those are the main points of Grace's kit, so let's talk about her overall value now. So in my opinion, and I do use Grace a lot on my account even now just for lack of good electric characters build for DPS wise, she's not awful, but I would say pretty confidently that she is the worst anomaly character right now. It just doesn't feel like she does enough in comparison to other anomaly options. And if your main reason for wanting Grace is to have a solid electric character on your account, there are better options there. If you're running a lot of anomaly characters, kind of like how I do, Yanagi is way better than Grace, and based on what reruns we've had so far, I would not be surprised if she reruns in 2.1. because she's the only character from the first few patches that has not reran, including the reruns for version 2.0. So there is going to be a good possibility for that. But if you just want an attack DPS character, you have both Silver Soldier Anbi and Harumasa, which if you were playing during 1.4, you got Harumasa for free. So there's not as much of an excuse there. But for Silver Soldier Anbi, if you don't have her, you might have to wait a little bit for that, but if you are willing to, especially if there's not as much electric coming out for the enemies to be weak to electric, I think it's fine to wait because Silver Soldier Anbi is a very solid DPS. And all 3 of those are just going to perform way better than Grace. Then lastly, let's talk about Grace's signature W engine, which is Fusion Compiler. So this W engine will give 12% attack unconditionally, and whenever the wearer uses their special or EX special attack, they're going to get an extra 25 anomaly proficiency for 8 seconds. And this is going to be able to stack up to 3 times, which is really nice. This W engine is really good on Grace since you do focus on her special or EX special, but because a lot of anomaly characters also do like using their EX special, this W engine is actually pretty universal, so a lot of characters are going to be able to benefit on it, making it one of the better options for W engines, even outside of the character that it was meant for. So the next character we're going to talk about here is Rina. Now Rina is an electric support agent and a character that I've honestly really been liking a lot. So Rina's core gameplay revolves around her core passive, which will give a pen ratio buff to all allies of up to 30% whenever her servant bamboos attack, which they attack through basically her entire kit. So this buff is going to have a very solid amount of uptime as long as you're constantly weaving her in every so often, but she doesn't need to be on the field for that long. So you still are able to get a good amount of on-field time for your DPS, for your stunner, whatever characters need to be on-field for it. This is very good and just a very nice buff overall. Now, for players who are looking at Mindscapes, she does have some notable ones here. So her M1, I think, is very important and a very good Mindscape. It's going to increase the duration of her servant bamboos being on field, which is really good because that just means you're going to be able to get more of the buffs there since they're going to be on field more. And also, if you're within 10 meters of the servants, so if you have another character out but the servants are still on field, and you're within that range of 10 meters, you're going to get an additional pen ratio buff up to 130%, which is going to give you even more damage. And with the extra uptime for the buff, a lot more consistency with the kit as well, so you'll be able to just get more out of your DPS character. Then Rina's M4 is going to increase her energy regen when her servants are on field, which is really nice too, to just be able to use her skills more, so you can get that extra support and just keep them out on the field longer, because she also does have some quick assists through her kit, which is very nice to just automatically swap out into your DPS and also let them take advantage of the pen ratio buff. Then lastly, for Rina's M6, she gives a team-wide electric damage buff for 8 seconds whenever she uses her EX special, chain attack, and ultimate, which can be nice if you're pairing her with an electric damage dealer. Not really the greatest for, if you're running her with anyone else, but as we'll talk about when I go over her value in a second here, this is not really that big of a deal because of the teams you end up running her on. So, all in all, I think Rina is still a very good support character. Obviously, the best support in the game is Yao, but Rina and even other support characters too are still very good, even a year into the game being out. Pen ratio also isn't like a crazy common stat that's buffed by supporters. A lot of the time you'll see it being like damage buffs or attack buffs, things like that. But Rina doing pen ratio is a very nice thing. And because we don't have many like pen ratio buffers like that, especially not at the level that Rina does it, that gives her a lot of value. Now her additional ability, only really activating with Victoria Housekeeping allies or electric allies, does kind of hold her back from being as versatile as another support like Lucy or Yao, but she is still going to be a very solid option for these teams, and especially in a game like Zenless where you need 3 teams for one of the endgame modes, Rina is still a very good character. Now to talk about her W engine, Weeping Cradle, this is going to give 0.6% energy regen per second when she's off field, which is really good because you do want to activate those quick assists whenever she does get back on the field when you're resetting her buffs. Also with this W engine, allies will be able to deal 10% extra damage to enemies that are hit by the user for 3 seconds as well. And this damage will increase by 1.7% every 0.5 seconds until you add an additional 10.2% to this. So overall, a total of 20.2% damage increase is going to be very solid for allies. So because this is based on just hitting an enemy with the support and then swapping out, this is actually going to be a pretty universal W engine. I think really most supports can take a lot of advantage off of this. So even if you're not going with Rina, you already have, Rina, but are thinking about other W engines as well, I think this one, if you're looking for an overall account benefit, you get a lot of value from just how universal this support W engine is. So now the next character we have is Koleda, and Koleda is a fire stun character who doesn't need as much on-field time because you do need to properly use her mechanics to get the most out of her daze buildup. So you want to use her EX special, her chain attack, and her ultimate to gain the furnace fire effect. And whenever you use the second hit of her basic attack, it will consume the furnace fire to gain some extra days on the attack. And it is a pretty substantial amount as well through her core passive. And this is really the main way you are going to be building up days with her. So unless you're able to get the EX special, chain attack, or ultimate off, she really shouldn't be on field that much, because just hitting enemies mindlessly is not going to get you the days that she really can get with her kit. So now to move on to the notable mindscapes for her, since that really is just the core of her gameplay. So her M1 is going to increase the days of her special attack and EX special after using her second hit of basic attack, the fourth hit of her basic attack, or the enhanced basic attack from having Furnace Fire. So the M1 just gives her another way to deal more days, which is good for her kit as well, just to have faster stun rotations. Then for her M2, this is actually probably her best mindscape. Anytime you use her EX special, she's going to gain 60 energy. This can only trigger every 45 seconds, but this is going to be really good because getting an insane amount of energy back, like 60 energy, you're going to be able to get her EX special off more consistently and have a pretty, solid rotation with that as well, and not have to worry about sort of farming for energy and doing things that are not really going to, be super optimal just in the sake of getting energy back. This M2 could be very powerful. So that's everything there for Koleda's kit. Now to go over my overall thoughts for her. I think she is a pretty decent stunner character. Now obviously she's nowhere near the best, especially not anymore with some of the limited ones that have come out. But I do think that if you are a newer player or you don't really have, stun characters, I think she can be a solid option to start out with. But once you get a better option, character like Lighter, Chingy, Trigger, then you should probably think about replacing her as soon as possible. And I do think as well, because she is one of the characters who is having their additional ability change to also include the new Rupture specialty, she can also possibly be an early game team option for Yi Xuan. And I think having an option for new players for that is also going to be very good. But once again, once you get better options for that team, definitely replace Koleda, because I don't think that she's just on the same level as other stunners unless you have some very heavy investment on her. Then to go over her W engine here, the Hellfire Gears, she gets 0.6 extra energy regen per second when she's off field, and anytime she uses her EX special, she's going to get 10% impact for 10 seconds. And this can stack up to 2 times as well, which is really nice because you're going to increase her impact even more, and then you'll be able to consume the Furnace Fire you got from the EX special. So for this, while it is very good on Koleda, it only is good on other stunners if they use their EX special a lot, which is some of them, which is good. Like Chingy and Lighter can use the EX special a good amount, but it's not one that's going to be so universal that every stunner is going to benefit from it. So that is something to keep in mind there as well. It also is good on Lycaon, but we will talk about Lycaon once we get to his section here. But now we have Nekomata, who is a physical attack agent. And Nekomata, just M0 no signature W engine, is a very straightforward character. She just is a very fast DPS that's going to rely on dodge counters and quick assist to deal some extra damage. And if you are playing her at this level, she is very simple to play. But once we get into her mindscapes and also her W engine, which we'll talk about soon, she has a certain playstyle that you'll really have to play around with. So starting with Nekomata's M1, if she attacks an enemy from behind them, kind of like a sneak attack, she's going to ignore 16% of their physical resistance. And if that enemy is stunned, any attack, regardless of where you hit from, is considered to be this kind of sneak attack. So you're going to be able to get a lot of extra damage with that M1. Then Nekomata's M2 gives her an extra 25% energy regeneration rate when there's one enemy on the field, which could be a little niche, but if you're in like endgame like Deadly Assault where it's only bosses, this could be an interesting buff for those kinds of fights. Then for her M4, she's going to get 7% crit rate whenever using her EX special. This is going to last for 15 seconds and the buff can stack up to 2 times, so just giving her a little bit more consistency. And for her M6, she's going to get an 18% crit damage buff when using her chain and ultimate. And this can stack up to 3 times, but these buffs will expire when she leaves the field. So if Nekomata is permanently on the field, then these buffs are going to be permanent. And anytime you defeat an enemy with her, she's going to get the maximum amount of stacks from this, being a pretty nice crit damage increase for her kit. So now that we've gone over her mindscapes, let's talk about Nekomata's value. Now, in my opinion, Nekomata has been a victim of power creep. She's not really worth using at this point unless you do have some very heavy investment. I think at this point, like M1 is probably necessary to get the extra damage from the physical resistance shred. And I feel like just people who are using Nekomata now and having success with her are people who have mindscapes. They have a very high level of investment. So if you are a newer player and thinking that you'll get a lot of value out of Nekomata over other characters, I don't think that's the case. And there are better physical DPSs that require less effort to build and are going to give you better results. And those characters being Jane, who did just have a rerun, so if you're a new player, you probably aren't going to be able to take advantage of her anytime soon, or Piper, who is an A rank character who is still clearing endgame very well at a comparable level to even some of the S ranks. So those two characters can fill that physical, area on your account. So now let's talk about Nekomata's W engine here, the Steel Cushion. This is going to give an extra 20% physical damage and an extra 25% damage when hitting an enemy with a sneak attack. So this is going to be very good for Nekomata, obviously, but this isn't really the most universal option ever, because you do have to kind of cater your gameplay to it to hit enemies from behind. And if the character's kit that you're running it on doesn't really, work well with that or mesh well with it, then you're probably not going to want to use this W engine despite the extra damage bonus you're getting out of that. And obviously this is good on physical characters as well, but we don't have many physical attack characters outside of her. We just have her, we have Billy, and we have Corrin. So nothing really too crazy for there, but if we get more physical attack characters in the future, this could be a very good option, but right now it's not really great. Next up, we have Soldier 11. She's a fire attack character, and her main gameplay revolves around using fire suppression to deal increased damage on her basic attack and her dash attack. So there are two ways to activate fire suppression. The first one is to have the right timing when you're using her basic attack. There isn't like an in-game kind of tutorial for this timing. I feel like it's something you more so have to feel out with her, but getting this timing down is important so that you can get these extra hits, because the damage difference between the regular basic attack versus the fire suppression ones is pretty big. And the other way to get fire suppression on these attacks is by using her EX special, her chain attack, or her ultimate, because using any of these abilities is going to guarantee that your basic attack and dash attack will have fire suppression either for the next 15 times you use it or for the next 8 seconds, whichever one you use up first. So with that, that's really like the only mechanic she has in her kit. If you're able to use her EX special, chain attack, and ultimate a lot, she ends up being a fairly easy to play DPS, but if you do want to take the time to learn the timing on the basic attack to use fire suppression even without that, it could take a little bit more time to get comfortable with her. So now let's talk about Soldier 11's notable mindscapes, because she does have some very interesting ones here as well. Her M1 will set her energy to 80 if her energy is less than 40, either when she switches into battle or when combat begins. And this can only happen once every 50 seconds, but it is still very good, especially for the start of battle, because it's going to allow you to use that EX special and get those guaranteed fire suppression as well. So it is a nice, consistency kind of upgrade for her. Then her M2 gives her a 3% damage bonus for 15 seconds anytime you trigger fire suppression on the basic attack, dash attack, or dodge counter. And this could stack up to 12 times as well, making it a pretty nice damage bonus since you are going to want to be attacking consistently with her. And for each full basic attack combo, she has 4 hits, so you'll get 4 stacks per basic attack combo, which I think is pretty good. Then for the M4, the fire suppression activating during the first 3 hits of the basic attack will increase her anti-interrupt level and also reduce the damage she receives while the skill is active, which I guess is nice, but the anti-interrupt is going to be, just a little extra perk there. But when you trigger fire suppression during the 4th hit of her basic attack, she's going to be invulnerable, which for some of these bosses that attack a lot, especially like the Deadly Assault Pompeii, that is also something that is really good, and I think a lot of people are going to find that to be helpful. And then for her M6, using her EX special, chain attack, or ultimate is going to give 8 stacks of charge, and each stack of charge will be consumed when you use fire suppression. And by consuming these charges, Soldier 11 is going to ignore 25% of the enemy's fire res, which is a very nice buff for just increasing her overall damage. So with all those mindscapes and what she does in mind, I think Soldier 11 is very similar to Nekomata, where just based on the progression of the game and with how there aren't any like super crazy mechanics in her kit, I think it is not as worthwhile to run Soldier 11 unless you do have a heavy amount of investment on her. And especially in Soldier 11's case, if you don't have Lighter as your stun character with her, she's going to perform way worse because of his additional buffs he has for fire damage as well, which definitely does help Soldier 11. But obviously, you know, if you don't have him, you're not getting those buffs or nearly as many buffs from other setups. So that is something that's important to keep in mind. And if you don't play to her fire suppression mechanics, then you are going to be hurting your damage a lot, because if you don't activate fire suppression, you're not really going to be dealing a crazy amount of damage there. And as a DPS, you want to be able to deal damage. So playing to that fire suppression mechanic is super important. But I also just think that there are better fire DPSs and sub DPSs out there. Like mainly we have Evelyn, who will likely rerun probably the next like couple patches or so after 2.0, considering that Astra Yao is rerunning already. And also Bernice, who did just rerun, so if you have her, great, but if not, you know, we will probably have to wait some time for that. And even, you know, just having Lighter as well, he has better options with other characters as well. But if you do want to use Soldier 11, or if you have a lot of investment in her, Lighter is still a very good partner for her. Then lastly, for Soldier 11's W engine, the Brimstone, she's going to get 3.5% attack for 8 seconds anytime she or the wearer is going to hit an enemy with the basic attack, dash attack, or dodge counter. It can stack up to 8 times, and the attack bonus stacks can be gained once every half a second, which is pretty solid since you are going to be using your basic attack a good amount. So you should be able to get these stacks pretty comfortably with her, and really any attack character that's using basic attack a lot. And with that, I think it's going to be great for not just Soldier 11, but also if you have other attack characters that are using their basic attack a lot. Like someone like Ellen, or well, we'll see how Ellen's going to play really with the buffs as well once those drop. But Ellen does use her basic attack a decent amount as well, so she can get these extra stacks. Plus also her dash attack is an important part of her kit, so that's going to be another sort of beneficial thing. But really any attack character that uses a lot of basic attack and dash attack, they're going to really like this W engine, so it is a pretty solid option. And finally, for our last character of the bunch, we have Lycaon. Lycaon is an ice stun character, and his gameplay focuses on using charged attacks. He can charge his basic attack by holding down the button, and he can also charge his EX special, and you're going to get some really nice bonuses from this. For his basic attack, by using the charge variant, you're going to get an additional 80% daze on enemies, which is really good to get them stunned. And charging the EX special does have a higher daze multiplier than just using it normally. And because with stun character, you want to get those stuns as quickly as possible, this is going to be very important for Lycaon to get those stuns, and then, you know, his allies being able to benefit off of the stun window. Also, it's important to note that Lycaon's EX special and assist follow-up also debuff the ice res of the enemies as well. So to talk about the notable mindscapes, there are really just 2 that stuck out to me. The first one is his M1, which gives him a 12% daze increase from his EX special. This can only activate once every 8 seconds, but it is still very nice to just get that nice burst of damage and then go back to using his charge basic attacks while you're waiting for your energy to come back, and while you're waiting for this 8-second cooldown to also refresh as well. And this buff is increased by an additional 10% by using the charged EX special, which you should be using the charge one all the time, so that should be an extra 22% days on this move here, which is very good for him as well, paired with all the extra days that he's getting from everything else in this kit. Then the other notable mindscape he has is his M2, which allows him to gain 5 energy per second when he either stuns an enemy or when any character on the team triggers their chain attack. And of course, energy is going to be very good for Lycaon to get because he's going to be able to charge up that EX special and use the charge EX special for extra days from the M1, plus the extra days multiplier that it has in comparison to the regular EX special. So both these Mindscapes are very good for him, and it does help that they are pretty early as well. So to talk about his value, I think Lycaon is a very solid stun character. He definitely needs to use his charge attacks, otherwise he's going to be super mid. So it is important to at least use those. And while at a point, I was kind of hit or miss on Lycaon based on the characters that were coming out and other stunners being better with those newer characters, Lycaon has had an increase of value recently because of not only Hugo coming out, which Lycaon works really well with, but also Ellen is getting buffed in version 2.0, so Lycaon is going to be great with her as well. Then the last thing for Lycaon is to talk about his W engine, the Restrained. So the Restrained gives 6% days and damage from the basic attack for 8 seconds whenever attacking an enemy. This can stack up to 5 times, and you can only get 1 stack per skill that you use. So using basic attack will give you 1 stack, it doesn't matter how many hits. Since it all is the basic attack, that'll be 1. Then you use the EX special, that'll be 1. So you do want to use multiple types of skills. And this is a pretty solid option for a lot of stun characters because of the extra days you get. But for some of them who may want things like extra energy or have other stats that are more important to their kit and how they function, this may not be the best option for them just because this one is sacrificing some extra maybe utility or support stats for the additional damage as well. So that is something to keep in mind. If it's more of like a damage dealing stunner, this will be very good on them. But if they end up being more of like a passive or like not really like a damage dealer kind of stunner, then it's not going to be great for them. So you've made it through my yapping about all the characters. So now I want to outline my best picks for you for both character and W engine based on everything we talked about. So I think for character, I think by far Rina and Lycaon are going to be your best options. These two characters have really stood the test of time. Back when I made my original video, like months ago, I still had them as the best sort of picks there, and they've really just still done super well despite them being standard characters. Rina being a very solid support option, and Lycaon gaining some increased relevancy now with some ice characters coming out that are very solid and work very well with his kit. Then in a kind of like middle tier, I'm gonna put Koleda and Grace. Not to say that they're like really good, but I think that they are characters that can perform well given the right circumstances, and are characters that I think, you know, especially newer players could benefit from depending on the characters they plan to use. But these are also characters that I think once you get a better option, you should replace. Then at the bottom here, I have Nekomata and Soldier 11 just in general. I'm not going to say that they're like unusable, but for these two characters to really compete with newer DPSs or just other DPSs in general, they really need a heavy amount of investment. So if you're a new player, I really don't recommend Nekomata and Soldier 11 just because to get them to perform, you know, really well and to do you a lot of good, especially in the end game that is ever evolving and, you know, ever getting, you know, increased power creep and HP inflation, that kind of stuff, then these characters just at M0 with their signature W engine, they're probably not going to perform nearly as well as some of the better characters. So that is something to keep in mind in there. But if you're also a more veteran player, if you've been playing for a while and you have everything, or you don't have maybe just like one character, it probably doesn't matter too much what to get. But based on the, you know, mindscapes that I mentioned earlier, just really look at what's going to give you the most value for your account, because I feel like every situation is going to be different. But now let's talk about my best picks for the W engines. I think that for if you're a new player and you chose what character to pick up, I think it's super worth it to just pick up that character's W engine as well, because that's going to give you a very nice start to the game, especially if you are picking up, you know, Yishuan as the main banner character for the start of 2.0 as well. If you pick up one of these other characters, while they may not work super well together, depending on which character you pick, I think having a standard character with their signature as an earlier game player can be very valuable. But of course, if you're a veteran player and you may not be using all the standard characters anymore, you already have their W engines, and getting W engine, you know, dupes may not be the most appealing thing ever, I do still have some picks for overall account value. I think the best of the 6 W engines for overall account value, and not just using them on the character they're meant for, but also just can be used on other characters as well, I've got to say are probably Fusion Compiler, which is Grace's signature W engine, and Weeping Cradle, which is Rina's signature W engine. The other ones aren't necessarily bad, but these two stand out to me because for Fusion Compiler, pretty much most if not all anomaly characters can use it, which is really nice if you don't want to pull for a signature W engine or if you're already using some of the other like A rank ones. And then Rina's just works well for really any support to give some extra damage for the team. So because of how universal these two are, I think if you're someone who has a lot of the standard roster already, or if you're just looking for something to benefit your account in general, I think these two are going to be the best W engine picks. So that is everything I have for this video here. I definitely hope that a lot of people are going to benefit from this. I definitely think they will, given that a lot of these standard characters do still have value, some more than others obviously, but it is still a very good thing that we are getting both a free S rank character and a free S rank W engine. It's going to start new players, whether you're just new on PC or if you're part of the people coming from Xbox with the Xbox release for 2.0. I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this. So I'd love to hear what character and W engine you'll be picking in the comments down below. But I want to thank you all so much for watching. And if you enjoyed and want to see more Zenless Zone Zero content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that, everyone, I will see you all next time.